Hey everyone, welcome back to Ragtag Stacking. In today's video, I want to talk a little bit about Basel III and the effects that it may have on gold and silver. So I do know that there have been a lot of videos on this topic, and I just started reading some articles because I saw it popping up and didn't exactly know what Basel III was. So if you are in that, if you're in that boat as well, I'm just going to put up a little screenshot here just to give you a little bit of an idea of what it is. It's basically they're looking at putting in some more, regulations almost, and it will help with risk management within the worldwide banking industry. The article goes on further and into more detailed points, but that's basically the broad strokes there. So yes, Basel III will definitely, if it's going to have an effect on the silver and gold, it will be, paper versus physical. That's where you're going to start to see maybe a bit of a change. Because in this article it goes on talking about the difference between allocated and unallocated precious metals, and how it's a very, very big difference in how much unallocated precious metals there are in the banking systems all over the world, all the different countries, and how it is a very, very big problem. So yes, like I said, I did find this article. It's a very long one. I did go through some of the main points, but I always leave a link in the description if you want to read through the entire thing. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to jump onto the computer and show you this article. Okay, so this is the article here. It's on Numismatic News, and then the title is, Will Basel III Boost Gold and Silver Prices? And this is the screenshot that I showed you at the beginning of the video in the intro there. So I'm just going to go down here. It says, work on the Basel III changes began in 2008 on the onset of the Great Recession. And the original version was adopted in 2010 to be implemented in 2013 and 2012. But it actually goes on to say here that some of the revisions were so extreme that they were repeatedly delayed. And it says some of the impact of Basel III takes effect at the end of June this year, while all changes become effective on January 1st, 2023. So it says down here, the goal of the forthcoming Basel regulations is to limit the levels of risk that banks take on the pursuit of profits, which would hopefully prevent a major worldwide financial crisis if markets turn negative. It's a wonderful idea in theory. However, in practice, some changes could be disruptive to the actions of some governments, central banks, and financial institutions, where it is that there is already pushback. And getting into some of the stuff that I'm interested in, the precious metals, says that part of the Basel III regulations that could be especially disruptive are those involving bank trading of precious metals. And it's going to go down here into the difference between allocated precious metals and unallocated. With allocated, the customer is the owner of specific identified and segregated coins or bars. The brand name, weight, purity, and serial numbers of bars are recorded. So that is the allocated. You know what I mean? The customer has it. They're not physically holding on to it. They're giving it to the bank or wherever, and it's actually specifically identified. They know that this is their coin. So they have records and serial numbers of all that stuff, that this piece of silver, this bullion coin, goes to this one person. That's the allocated precious metals. Down here, they're going into the unallocated storage. So in unallocated storage, the bank's customer does not own specifically identified coins or bars. Instead, the customer is an unsecured creditor of the bank who has a claim against some of the assets owned by the bank. For example, a customer may have a 1,000-ounce silver bar in unallocated storage. The bank may be holding hundreds of thousands of those bars in unallocated storage, any one of which could be available to deliver on behalf of a customer if requested for withdrawal or sale. I will leave a link in the article if you want to go through the entire thing. I'm going to skip over some of the paragraphs that are just a lot of technical jargon and liabilities and stuff like that. So if you want to read the entire thing, I'll leave a link, but I'm just going to try and skip to the main things here. But when banks trade precious metals, the use of unallocated storage has a lot of advantages. Banks don't have to keep track of each bar and coin by individual owner, which saves a lot of paperwork and shuffling of assets when they change it. So instead of it being, a good thing for, to have the metals so that they're actually to an owner, you always hear that thing, if you don't hold it, you don't own it. This is where all that crap is coming in. You actually have, a tube of American Silver Eagles or Maple Leafs or something like that. You actually have it in your hand, but they're just showing here that the 1,000 ounces that you have, if it's in unallocated funds, it's out of your hands, literally out of your hands. You don't have it anymore. It's not, you don't own it. It says here that they can just send it out to wherever multiple different people can have, different claims. So yeah, I know, as long as it's easier and less hassle and paperwork and shuffling assets around for the banks, as long as it's easier for them, whatever, right? Since the everyday turnover of precious metals involves only a relatively small percentage of assets a bank may hold, the bank can fulfill the delivery needs even if it does not have physical custody and title to all the precious metals it owes to customers. So a little bit like a Ponzi scheme, you know what I mean? The money coming in from the new people will take care of the people that are cashing out. So as long as it stays below or around a certain percentage, they still have, I guess, enough physical to float them. That's where I keep saying this is where the squeeze could come in, not on the physical side that everyone on the Wall Street bets and all that stuff. The Wall Street silver are trying to make the physical silver short squeeze a thing. The paper is where you could do it. But unfortunately, it's been manipulated and it's, has a stronghold by so many higher ups and banks and all that stuff. I just did a video talking about paper to physical silver is like, I think it's something like 250 to 1 is the ratio. So there is a lot of, it's very good to go by the old adage of if you don't hold it, you don't own it. Because banks, they you know what I mean? They leverage out this silver to as many people as they can take money from. And you know what I mean? When it comes time to pay, if let's just say 50% of the people want to get their silver, it's going to be a pretty interesting news day seeing the whole crisis and whatever's going to happen then. Because it's out there, it's a possibility. So they're fine with just taking as much money and profit for themselves, and they're completely fine with the whole system being on the brink of collapse because they know they will never allow it, because it's that old adage, too big to fail. So that just seems to be a little bit of a security blanket for these hedge funds and investors, just to go hog wild and crazy and make all the money they can and then just pass along the economic hardships after they get their bailout. So yeah, it's just like regular banks with regular cash. If it's a heavy day of people coming in, they might face a high percentage of their own customers showing up to withdraw all their funds. Just hypothetically, you know what I mean? They have those runs on the bank. They saw it in the 20. My favorite movie, one of my favorite Christmas movies, It's a Wonderful Life. When George and Mary were about to go on their honeymoon, they stopped and like, oh, it looks like a run on the bank, Mary. So he had to go and open up his savings and loans and all that. That's exactly the same thing with these unallocated. It's they just don't have enough there to cover the people that want it. So it's like a house of cards, you know what I mean, or a Ponzi scheme basically. Lack of need to have a title and custody of high percentage of physical precious metals in their vaults compared to what their liabilities to customers has resulted in massive trading volumes in what I can call paper assets. The most important changes for precious metals is that banks would be required to hold reserves against their assets. Under the coming regulations, banks would count unallocated precious metals as 85% of their value on the bank's book in making the determination of how much it needs to hold in reserves against these assets. So it says here, therefore, to comply with Basel III, banks would have to either create a huge increase in their shareholders' equity to provide the required reserves, or they will be forced to sharply reduce or completely eliminate their trading in unallocated precious metals. So that will drastically reduce the amount of, just fictional precious metals out there, basically fictional, because they talked about the ratio to paper to physical being 250 to 1. That's not real stuff. So maybe these regulations will help to, shorten the gap between the physical and the paper. And then going down a little bit further here, it says, with the elimination of most trading in unallocated storage, the U.S. government could lose its primary tactic of suppressing gold and silver prices. Between the increased demand for physical precious metals and the elimination of the use of unallocated precious metals to suppress prices, gold and silver prices might undergo huge increases. So this is the main thing, the main factor of the Basel III that will be affecting the precious metals, is the way that the banks are able to use unallocated and allocated storage. So I won't go and continue anymore because it is going down a little bit more with the page here, but like I said, I will leave a link. I just wanted to get to that point as to why the Basel III could have such a big impact. And like I said, it is because of the way the banks are able to have unallocated metals and, you know, just have multiple people claiming stake to the same ounce. But yes, numismaticnews.net. This is a very long article. I did try to get to some of the main parts, but I didn't want to be reading the whole article for another half hour. So link will be in the description if you do want to go over the main points. So yeah, that was the article there. I thought it was pretty interesting, and I think it's a good thing if they're trying to narrow that gap between the paper and the physical ratio. I don't know how much of an effect it will be. I doubt that it would go down to like the 1-to-1, where it's, you know, there is no inflated paper, and that if you don't hold it, you don't own it, won't mean anything, because if you do have it at a place, it will all be allocated and it will be yours, it will be identified and all that stuff. So for some people that don't like having to have their precious metals in their house, they don't like having to have all that weight in a safe and things like that. For people that are, you know, mainly into the prepping side of stacking, they do want to have quick, fast access to their gold and silver if they need to bug out and things like that. But for people that are just using it as a hedge against inflation and, you know, like a physical savings account and things like that, one of the main reasons they don't put it into the banks or, you know, a third party is because of that, you know, the unallocated problem and the paper to physical. So yeah, that could open some doors for people that, you know, don't particularly like having all their physical silver and gold in their house, but they don't want to be at the mercy of the unallocated precious metals trading, where you don't actually have a real claim to your metals like you would with the allocated, where it's identified, serialized, and this piece is yours. So yeah, that's it for today's video. Let me know in the comments what you think, if you think this Basel III is going to be a huge game changer, or if you think that, you know, it's a step in the right direction, but in the next couple of months and year, it's not going to see a huge difference, but maybe, you know, a little further down you'll start seeing the benefit. Or if you think nothing is going to change at all and they're just going to find a new way to you know, make the money, high risk maneuvers and things like that. And as I said before, they seem to be fearless because they know the system has been bailed out time and time before, and it just seems there's no penalties for any wrongdoing. So if they can continue to make money and then just, you know, have their asses saved if they screw up, you know, why would they stop? But anyways, I rambled on long enough. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you come back for the next one. Thank you.